let's hear it from the shield maiden of the far right, Miss Eva Vlaardingerbroek.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm receiving more and more nicknames. Shield Maiden of the Far Right. Today it was Iron Lady. Anyway, I'm very honored to be here today. Thank you, honorable members of the European Parliament who are present here today. Thank you specifically, of course, to MEP Fröhlich for this invitation. And thank you all for being here, patriots who were with us today at our first ever Save Europe Act rally. I'm honored to sit here with gentlemen who are fighting the good fight for our continent, who are fighting also the good fight for freedom of speech, because as we have heard, it is vehemently under threat. That's why I'm very glad that we get to discuss lawfare in the heart of the institution that is responsible for a lot of it. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a political commentator from the Netherlands, and I also happen to have a background in law. And I was thinking back about my time in university as a fresh 18-year-old law student, and one of the first ever real lectures that we got on how the system operates, what the legal system is comprised of. And one of the main messages I remember from our professor was, of course, the importance that the legal system, and especially its judges, are independent and unbiased. And now, I remember already back there and then thinking, is that really always the case? Can we just expect judges, the moment that they put their toga on, to just let go of their political biases? And I asked my professor that question, and he immediately turned to me and said that asking a question like that type of rhetoric is exactly the type of rhetoric that undermines the legitimacy of our legal system. Those were my first weeks in law school. And that was a really important lesson for me to learn. And I don't think I quite realized back there 10 years ago how important it would be for myself and my future life as a political commentator that I would later become. Now we are about 10 years ahead. I'm turning 30 very soon, so I'm not as young as Andrea Ballerati, but still quite young. And I think that everyone who is honest knows that lawfare is real and that lawfare is disproportionately, if not exclusively, waged against patriotic forces in Europe. My professor didn't want to admit that. I'm sure he still does not, but it is true. You just have to look at who gets prosecuted in Europe. Who gets prosecuted for hate speech, incitement to violence, or discrimination? Well, obviously, it is not the left. The left does not get prosecuted for any of those things. Only the right does. The left, now that I say it, doesn't even get prosecuted for the actual violence that they frequently commit. Violence that we do not commit, even though we are always accused of wanting to commit it. However, lawfare doesn't just, obviously it attacks mostly patriotic forces, but not all right-wingers get targeted equally harshly, I would say. If you look at who the establishment loves to target the most, I think that there are two groups. One of them is comprised of pro-life individuals. We've all seen and heard the stories of people who are silently praying outside of abortion centers and get arrested for it. Silent prayer, may I say. That's not speaking, that's not a protest. That is something that you would hope is allowed in free democratic societies. But we have seen more often than not that it is not. And the second group that gets targeted, of course, are those who most ardently fight against mass immigration, and specifically those who argue for re-migration. Now, the common denominator with those two groups, if you ask me, is very clear. Both abortion and mass immigration are two means to the same end, the replacement of native Europeans. One prevents them from being born, The other one replaces them after they are born. That is the truly forbidden topic in Europe. That is what they try to catch you on. That is what they want to send you to jail for, because, of course, it is the one thing that they want to censor. If they don't succeed at censoring us, if they don't succeed at suppressing that truth, then Europe will wake up to what I'm sure will be recorded as the greatest crime in the history of Europe, and that is the replacement of our people. If they succeed, it will be the end of European history, of Europe as we know it. And therefore, reversing it, reversing replacement migration, reversing mass migration with remigration is the fight of our lifetimes. It is the most important thing that we have to do. If we don't succeed at it, our civilization will die, but in the meantime, our children will be murdered. They already are. We were just talking about them, just a couple of names. We talked about Henry, of course, Louis, and we talked about Christian. 3 men, young boys even, who were murdered in the past, 2-3 weeks in Europe? And the list goes on and on and on and on. The violence against native Europeans will just increase exponentially if we don't turn this around. If you think that things are bad now, and they are, then just imagine what they will be like in 20 years from now. Imagine the Europe that our children will have to grow up in. If it's up to this institution with their dispersal laws, then soon there will be no village, no quaint European little small town left that we can escape to. That will be over. So those moments that we can still cherish, those towns that we can still go to escape from the hellhole that is Brussels, they won't be available to our children. That is why we fight. We fight for our children, and that is why they fight us with lawfare. Now, as you have heard, the men next to me are examples of it. I would say, as Andrea mentioned, that Dries might be the personification of the end of the rule of law. What happened to this man is a disgrace that every single university, every single law department should be up in arms about. And I'm sure that none of them have said a word. Now, as I told you, I'm from the Netherlands. And also in the Netherlands, lawfare is very, very active. Just to name a few names, my best friend, Reisa Blommestein, you might know her. She was convicted now in her appeal, again, of course, for discrimination, even more specifically, insulting a group. Because in Dutch criminal law, you can be put in jail or receive big fines for insulting a group. We have Geert Wilders, we have Thierry Baudet, Gideon van Meijeren, Pepijn van Houwelingen, sorry. The list also there goes on and on and on. All of the most important right-wing voices have criminal records by now. That's basically a fact. And now, I myself have not been prosecuted yet, with the emphasis on yet, but I am not a stranger to censorship and intimidation. I've been kicked out of my PhD program for being too politically outspoken. Now, of course, there were many people in my PhD program who were politically outspoken for the other side, and that was fine. But I had to leave. I've been banned from basically every single social media platform under the sun. I have had police knocking at my parents' door to ask them what they thought about my behavior online, and that it was quite intense, and maybe, they would have to keep an eye out. Very nice threats. Maybe you have heard that recently I've been denied entry. I've been banned from the United Kingdom for criticizing Keir Starmer. Well, if that is not straight out of the dictator's playbook, then I don't know what is. And this is something that I've spoken about before. About a year and a half ago, I received a message from Apple that first I thought was fake, but turned out to be very much real, that my phone was under mercenary spyware attack. So exactly the reality that Dries just described You know, the feeling that you are always being watched, that every picture that you take of your child, that every moment that you have in private is in fact not private. That is scary. It is scary, and it is something that, even though I wouldn't want it to, affects me and influences me when I do my political commentary. I have to think about these things very, very carefully. Not because there is anything that I want to do or say that is illegal, but because I know that the rules don't apply to people like me the way that they might do to others. Even if I have no intention of breaking the rule, or if I did not break the rule has been designed in a way that it will break me. That is my reality, and that is the reality of these men here. Because that is the aim of the people who oppose us. They want to break the opposition, ban it, and criminalize it. They do this while they laugh in our faces, because there is no institution like this one here that does one thing and exactly claim to do the opposite of it, like protect democracy. I don't know how many meters high banner that the European Commission is proudly showing on their building. They laugh at us in our faces. It is a demonic type of inversion of the truth. It is the Umwertung aller Werte for the German speakers amongst us. It is just like what the Bible says. Woe to those who call good what is evil and call evil what is good. That is what the European Commission does. It calls what is good evil and what is evil good. But there are still a lot of people who don't see this reality. Of course, it is being hidden from them. But there are also still people who think that, this is the West. You know, we're not China. We won't get that far. Okay. I highly, highly doubt it. We are all living, breathing examples of what can happen. And as we said, with chat control, they don't need mercenary spyware on your phone. They don't need to pay millions and millions of euros to target individuals. They can just do it like that. It's already here. But the fact that so many people don't see it is a big problem. And it is actually also part of the reason why we started the Save Europe Act. Of course, we started it because we want to save this continent from replacement migration and we want remigration, but we also started it as a European citizens initiative, a legal tool from this very institution, because we figured that they would go against it. We figured that they would show their true anti-democratic nature. And that maybe we would wake up a few more people with that. Maybe they would finally see that on the one hand, the European Union hyper-regulates our lives with stupid things such as like the caps on your plastic water bottle. But on the other hand, they hide behind the most vague definitions to control our lives. They are trying to reject the registration of this act. So mind you, it's the registration. It's not even the act, you know, the content of the act. It's the registration of the use of this instrument that they proudly advertise as every citizen's right to make their opinion be heard and bring what matters most to them to the European Commission. They're trying to do that on the basis of that it goes against European values. Why do they do that? Well, because you can never win against such vagueness. When they use that vagueness as a political weapon, it is impossible to challenge them. And I am, of course, not the only one who now has experience with that with this Save Europe Act. We are being hosted today by the ESN group that is facing the exact same attack. This institution also claims, or at least parts of this institution, claims that this group goes against European values. So wanting a Europe that is safe, prosperous, and for Europeans goes against European values according to the European Commission. That makes them, in my eyes, even more than anything, a completely illegitimate body. This is not rule of law. We know it. We feel it. We have seen testimonies and heard testimonies of it today. Lawfare is the way that tyrants maintain power. It's the way that they indeed threaten us and even literally shut us up and lock us away. But there is, of course, hope. There's always hope. There is hope if we continue to speak out in great numbers, because they cannot put every single one of us in jail. The saying goes, there's safety in numbers, but there is also power in numbers. And we already see that, and I'm so grateful for that, with the Safe Europe Act. Over 500,000 people signed it in less than 2 months. Now, of course, we need to get to the 1 million threshold, and we need to do it fast, and we need more than 1 million, because I know that there are more than 1 million citizens in the EU that want these borders secured, that want remigration. But we have to reach them, and we can only do that with your help. So I ask of you to, even in your own private circle, your friends, your family, ask them to sign. Go to our website, sign the Safe Europe Act, because this is not just an initiative, it is a movement. And together with you, we will fight this fight to the bitter end, and we will save Europe. Thank you very much.